Welcome back to our channel, your premier destination for the most comprehensive and passionate analysis of the bold and the beautiful. Today is a thrilling day to dive deep into the glamorous, cutthroat world of Los Angeles fashion, where loyalty is a fleeting illusion and family ties are constantly tested by the intoxicating allure of absolute power. Let's unravel the latest explosive drama. The atmosphere within the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations has become nothing short of suffocating. The air is thick with unspoken resentments, corporate espionage, and the heavy, authoritarian reign of Steffy Forrester Finnegan. For weeks, the tension has been building to a catastrophic boiling point. Steffy, exercising her ruthless executive authority, has once again halted the hope for the future line, mercilessly sidelining years of creative dedication to prioritize Eric Forster's couture collection. This calculated business maneuver was not merely a shift in corporate strategy. It was a profound, deeply personal strike against Hope Logan Spencer. Hope has poured her entire soul, her boundless creativity, and her unwavering passion into building a brand that champions positivity and progressive fashion. To see it shelved with such cold indifference has left her emotionally shattered, professionally disillusioned, and dangerously vulnerable to the whispers of rebellion. In the stark, echoing aftermath of Steffy's decree, Hope found herself standing at a terrifying crossroads. The once vibrant design offices felt like a mausoleum for her ambitions. It is in this profound state of despair and marginalization that the seeds of temptation were masterfully sown. The rival Logan brand, spearheaded by the fiercely ambitious Katie Logan Spencer and the relentlessly opportunistic Bill Spencer, has been basking in the glow of a monumental global triumph. Their debut collection, controversially built upon the foundational designs of Eric Forrester, has been broadcasted across international billboards, presenting a glittering, seductive alternative to the toxic, oppressive environment of Forrester Creations. Hope, feeling entirely alienated by the family she thought she belonged to, began to seriously contemplate the unthinkable, defecting to the Logan camp alongside Deke Sharp, leaving the Forrester legacy in her rearview mirror. It was precisely at this moment of agonizing vulnerability that the trap was meticulously sprung. A mysterious, anonymous entity began infiltrating Hope's digital life, sending her highly classified, unfinished sketches drawn by the legendary Eric Forster himself. These were not mere doodles. They were the raw, unrefined brilliance of a fashion patriarch, the kind of intellectual property that could launch 1,000 collections and completely dominate the global market. Accompanying these breathtaking sketches were persuasive, insidious messages, encouraging Hope to take these designs, finish them, and present them as the crown jewels of the new Logan collection. The anonymous sender played upon Hope's deepest insecurities and her burning desire for vindication, framing this act of corporate theft not as a crime, but as a righteous crusade to defeat Steffy Forrester Finnegan once and for all. The psychological warfare waged against Hope was nothing short of brilliant. The messages whispered exactly what her bruised ego desperately needed to hear. They validated her anger, amplified her sense of betrayal, and painted a vivid picture of ultimate victory. Hope spent agonizing, sleepless nights staring at the glowing screen of her tablet, tracing the elegant, sweeping lines of Eric's unfinished masterpieces. She was caught in a brutal internal conflict, torn between her intrinsic moral compass and the overwhelming, intoxicating desire for revenge. She imagined the look of absolute devastation on Steffy's face when a Logan brand unveiled a collection so magnificent that it would render Forrester Creations obsolete. The temptation was a living, breathing entity in her living room, slowly eroding her ethical boundaries and convincing her that in the ruthless war of high fashion, the ends would ultimately justify the means. Driven by a potent cocktail of grief, anger, and a desperate need to reclaim her professional agency, Hope made the fatal decision to cross the Rubicon. She convinced herself that she was not stealing, but merely reappropriating the genius that Steffy was squandering. She believed that by finalizing Eric's designs under the Logan banner, she would be honoring the art rather than the corporate machine that had so callously discarded her. With trembling hands and a racing heart, she began to compile the digital files, preparing to secretly transfer the intellectual property to Katie and Bill's secure servers. It was a moment of profound transformation for Hope Logan Spencer, a shedding of her perpetual innocence in favor of a darker, more pragmatic approach to survival in a city that devours the weak. However, the illusion of her secret rebellion was shattered with the force of a physical blow. Just as she was finalizing her plans, the heavy mahogany doors of the executive office swung open, revealing the towering, furious figure of Ridge Forrester. Ridge, whose blood was already boiling over the ongoing, bitter war regarding Katie and Bill's previous utilization of Eric's designs, had been tipped off. The confrontation that ensued was a masterclass in dramatic devastation. The silence in the room was instantly replaced by the deafening roar of Ridge's righteous indignation. He did not see a grieving designer seeking validation. He saw a traitor, a thief caught red-handed in the act of plundering his ailing father's legacy. The accusations hurled at Hope were venomous and absolute. Ridge cornered her, his voice trembling with a potent mix of disgust and heartbreak. He accused her of intellectual property theft, of betraying the very foundation of the Forrester family, and of proving every negative assumption Steffy had ever harbored about the Logan lineage. Hope, paralyzed by the sudden, terrifying exposure, tried to stammer out an explanation, tried to articulate the anonymous messages and the profound sense of marginalization that had driven her to this desperate precipice. But her words fell on deaf ears. In Ridge's eyes, the evidence was irrefutable. The digital trail was undeniable. Hope was caught holding the smoking gun, and the narrative of her guilt was instantly, irrevocably cemented in the Forrester consciousness. What Hope did not know, and what Ridge could not possibly fathom, was that this entire catastrophic scenario was a brilliantly orchestrated illusion. The anonymous sender, the supplier of the unfinished sketches, the architect of Hope's professional demise, was none other than R.J. Forrester. The Golden Boy, the supposed bridge between the Forrester and Logan families, had descended into a dark, Machiavellian abyss. R.J.'s transformation from a supportive sibling figure to a ruthless corporate predator is a chilling testament to the corrupting influence of power and legacy. Motivated by a toxic blend of entitlement, paranoia, and a desperate need to secure his own standing within the company, R.J. had meticulously designed this labyrinthine trap to eliminate Hope from the board entirely. R.J.'s psychological descent has been subtly foreshadowed by his recent, increasingly aggressive behavior. We have witnessed his coercive, manipulative tactics against Melissa Dillon, exploiting her paralyzing fear of poverty and homelessness to force her compliance in his personal vendettas. We have seen his explosive, entitled clashes with Will Spencer, where R.J. weaponized his Forrester bloodline to assert dominance. R.J. has become obsessed with Forrester purity, viewing the Logan influence not as a collaboration, but as an existential threat to his family's empire. By framing Hope for the ultimate corporate sin, stealing from Eric Forrester, R.J. achieved a masterstroke of manipulation. He simultaneously neutralized the threat of Hope defecting and strengthening the rival Logan brand, while permanently cementing Steffy's absolute, unchallenged monopoly over Forrester creations. The execution of R.J.'s scheme was flawless. He utilized encrypted burner accounts, routed through untraceable IP addresses, to drip-feed the temptation to Hope. He knew her psychological pressure points intimately. He knew that the recent halting of the Hope for the Future line would leave her desperate, angry, and uniquely susceptible to the promise of revenge. R.J. played Hope like a finely tuned instrument, guiding her step by step toward her own execution. And when the moment was right, when Hope had finally taken the bait and possessed the stolen files, it was R.J. who anonymously tipped off his father, ensuring that Ridge would be the one to catch her in the act. The sheer cruelty of using Ridge as the instrument of Hope's destruction highlights the terrifying depths of RJ's newfound ruthlessness. The fallout from this explosive revelation has been nothing short of apocalyptic for Hope Logan Spencer. The trap did not merely destroy her career. It systematically dismantled her entire support system, leaving her stranded in a wasteland of isolation. The most agonizing blow came from her mother, Brooke Logan Forrester. Brooke has historically been Hope's fiercest defender, a maternal lioness who routinely went to war against Steffy and Ridge to protect her daughter's interests. Brooke had been outraged by Steffy's authoritarian management style and was fully prepared to fight for Hope's place at the company. However, the nature of Hope's supposed crime placed Brooke in an impossible, agonizing paradox. Brooke has been engaged in a bitter, escalating war against her own sister, Katie, vehemently condemning the Logan brand for utilizing Eric's designs. Brooke has stood upon a pedestal of moral superiority, defending the sanctity of Eric's intellectual property. When presented with the undeniable evidence that her own daughter was caught attempting to steal those very same designs to fuel the rival company, Brooke's entire moral framework collapsed. To defend Hope would be to expose herself as a massive, undeniable hypocrite. The scene between mother and daughter was a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. Brooke, tears streaming down her face, looked at Hope not with her usual unconditional support, but with a shattering mix of profound disappointment and tragic resignation. Brooke could not bridge the gap between her defense of Eric's legacy and her daughter's apparent treachery. In that devastating moment, Brooke turned her back, leaving Hope entirely adrift. The isolation was further compounded by the reaction of Liam Spencer. Liam, who had been acting as a supportive anchor, who had listened to Hope's frustrations and accompanied her to the glittering Logan celebration, was fundamentally repulsed by the deceit. Liam's moral compass, however flawed it may be at times, has always rejected the kind of underhanded corporate sabotage that Hope was accused of orchestrating. Seeing Hope stoop to the level of stealing from an ailing patriarch shattered the idealized image he held of her. The trust that had formed the bedrock of their complex relationship evaporated in an instant. Liam's withdrawal was not explosive like Ridge's, nor tragic like Brooke's. It was a quiet, devastating retreat, a silent judgment that left Hope feeling more profoundly alone than she ever had in her entire life. Hope now stands amidst the smoking ruins of her professional and personal life, a casualty of a war she did not even realize she was fighting. The label of a thief has been securely fastened to her reputation, threatening to destroy any future she might have in the fashion industry. The Forrester family views her as a toxic pariah, while the Logan family is fractured by the collateral damage of her accusation. Steffy sits upon her undisputed throne, her power absolute and unchallenged, entirely unaware that her victory was secured by the dark machinations of her younger brother. And RJ operates in the shadows, a smiling assassin who has successfully purged the company of its greatest perceived threat without leaving a single fingerprint on the weapon. Yet, from the ashes of this absolute devastation, a new, hardened version of Hope Logan Spencer must necessarily emerge. The initial shock and paralyzing grief of the betrayal are slowly beginning to curdle into a cold, terrifying resolve. Hope knows, deep in her soul, that she was manipulated. She recognizes the calculated precision of the anonymous messages, the convenient timing of Ridge's discovery, and the undeniable reality that she was a pawn in a much larger, much darker game. She has lost the trust of everyone she holds dear, but in losing everything, she has also lost her fear. The narrative thrust of this gripping storyline now pivots from a tale of temptation to a relentless, high-stakes quest for redemption and truth. Hope must navigate a treacherous landscape of corporate espionage, familial betrayal, and deep-seated paranoia to uncover the identity of her anonymous tormentor. She must become a detective in her own life, tracing the digital breadcrumbs that RJ so carefully attempted to erase. She must find a way to pierce the veil of Ridge's righteous anger, to bypass Steffy's impenetrable arrogance, and to expose the rot that is festering at the very core of the Forrester family. This is no longer merely a battle over fashion lines, haute couture, or billboard supremacy. It is a battle for Hope's very identity, her legacy, and her soul. She must prove that the people she called family are capable of the most breathtaking cruelty, and she must do it completely alone. The dramatic stakes have never been higher, the emotional wounds have never been deeper, and the coming storm promises to irrevocably alter the landscape of Los Angeles forever. Hope Logan Spencer has been pushed to the absolute brink, but as the masterminds of this cruel trap are about to learn, a woman with nothing left to